Former U.S. Attorney Richard Roper is in now. I appreciate you being here.
My pleasure.
Thanks very much. Well, we just heard that neighbor said that there needs to be some serious repercussions. In fact, the FBI even called this at one point an act of terrorism. Do you think this charge of hoax and sending false information, is that serious enough for what happened?
Well, you don't need to have people die of anthrax poisoning to have a terrorist act.
Okay. Essentially,
terrorism is scaring people, and that's exactly what, according to the complaint, he did. In numerous occasions, these volumes of letters that are being mailed out to these locations, it causes a lot of work for folks. You know, not only for the person that opens it up that doesn't know it's not really anthrax, but including threats, and these businesses have to marshal their resources to try to deal with these, and it changes the whole complex of a business. The way they receive letters, they have to have people wearing masks, they have to have gloves, so it's very, very serious.
Well, you shouldn't have to be afraid to open the mail. That's one thing we should be able to do, and it should be fine. And you mentioned the emotional cost of this. I mean, schools and the daycares and the worry for the parents and the educators and the people in those churches and different places. Then there's the cost of this, the manpower, the hours, the years of resources.
Exactly, and I think this is a good example of how law enforcement has worked together, not only the postal inspectors but the FBI, but also their colleagues in Boston. It's a good example of how they worked together. They obtained information and pieced together, because, you know, look, you can mail an envelope from any post office in the United States. And to be able to pinpoint that and bring this guy under arrest, at least at this point, is a tremendous effort.
Well, this is what I think you just mentioned, Boston. It's just really interesting in this case that, again, a letter mailed here from North Texas going to a school in Boston. So they went to the schools in Boston, looked at the IP addresses of people who'd logged onto the website to find the physical addresses, and then, you know, tracked it all down. Now, I think that was like 12 months ago that they did that.
Well, you know, I've worked with both the FBI and postal inspectors, and those agencies, especially when it deals with the mail, the postal inspectors it's amazing sometimes how they can track letters down to a specific location. So I'd have to say it's a good example of law enforcement working together to try to stop what I would consider a threat.
Well, I think, too, it's really interesting. A couple of years ago, I think just 2 years ago, the FBI, which, you know, they don't normally do, has released a lot of information, kind of the profile of who this person was, or who they suspected it to be, a man, alone, maybe a bit eccentric or odd, and releasing that information to the public looking for help.
Well, that's a tactical move law enforcement has to make. Sometimes they don't want to give out a lot of information, like in this case, because some of the letters nobody knew the contents of these letters, and then they've actually found a copy of the very same letter that was delivered in Boston. Pretty good law enforcement.
All right, so what do you think happens next then for the suspect in this case?
Well, he appears before a magistrate judge, and then there has to be an indictment within 30 days. So he hadn't been charged by indictment. From looking at the complaint, I wouldn't be surprised that there's some mental health issues. I wouldn't be surprised that a magistrate judge would order this defendant to be examined to determine whether he's competent to stand trial.
All right, we'll keep following it. Richard, thank you as always for coming in.
My pleasure.
Thank you very much.